you for joining me today. Are you someone who considers themselves a fixer? Are you constantly rescuing other people? Are you the one who is always keeping the peace, picking up slack, volunteering for everything? If you relate to any of this, then you are in the right place today. Today, we are talking about overcoming overfunctioning. And that is the tendency to take on more responsibility than is yours. And we're going to be talking about that specifically about how it manifests in the workplace. So, say hello if you are joining live today. Say hello in the chat. I see we have AJ here. Welcome. Let us know where you are watching from. I love to be able to shout you out. If you are catching this on replay, go ahead and type replay and share where you are watching from also. And before we dive in today, I do want to encourage you to grab a sheet of paper, a notebook, a file on your computer, somewhere where you can take notes because we're going to be going over a lot of information. You can always catch this video on replay, but I want you to be able to capture some of the information we're going to talk about and the insights that come up for you. As I'm going along as well, please help your neighbors out. We are a community here. If you hear something that resonates with you that I share or that you feel is important, then go ahead and type it in the chat to help your fellow neighbors here. Okay, so let's see. Hello, Valencia from Florida. Christina, good to see you. Marcella, hello from Michigan. Asia, great to have you. Jennifer, nice to see you here. Welcome, everybody. Keep those comments rolling in. Okay, so with that, let me briefly introduce myself. If we haven't met yet, I am Melody Wilding. I am a professor of human behavior, a executive coach, a licensed social worker, and I am the author of a book called Trust Yourself: Stop Overthinking and Channel Your Emotions for Success at Work. I am the creator of a program called Resilient, which is a first of its kind coaching program to help sensitive strivers, people who are sensitive leaders and high achievers, to help them regain their confidence, master their emotions, and reach their full potential at work. And it's a very exciting time around here because enrollment in Resilient opens in just about a week. It opens next week. So, this is the program for you if you want to go from insecure to empowered at work. The link to get on the wait list is on the screen here. I'll make sure it's in the chat as well. You can head to melodywilding.com/resilient to get on the wait list. And you're going to want to do that if you're at all interested in this program because we have limited spots. They tend to go fast. And the wait list rather will be the first to know. So this program includes weekly coaching, Q&As, a comprehensive curriculum, a vibrant community of other sensitive strivers who are your brain trust, and so much more. So make sure you head to that link. Okay. Hi, Jillian. Good to see you from Texas. Jack, great to have you here. Amazing. Okay, so let's get into our topic for today, which is overcoming overfunctioning. Now, as a sensitive striver, as a professional who thinks and feels everything more deeply, you are biologically wired to be more attuned to other people's emotions as well as your own. You have more active mirror neurons, which are exactly what help you sense subtleties in the environment and changes and emotions that other people are going through. So, this perceptiveness and empathy is a tremendous gift. It has probably made you very successful. But at the same time, if this goes unchecked, it can leave you susceptible to putting other people's needs and other people's reactions and responses ahead of your own and leaves you just reacting to what you think everybody else needs from you. So I see this all the time that sensitive strivers are helpful, loyal, but when taken to an extreme, it can come at a cost, not only to you, but to those you work with and even those around you, your community, your family, your spouse, which is exactly what we're here to talk about today. Hey, Robbie from Louisiana, good to see you. Great. Okay, so I hear from readers and sensitive strivers in our community all the time who tell me my sense of responsibility and accountability for everything in all areas of my life is exhausting me. How many of you relate to that? Type yes if you can relate to that in the comments. And I often hear people tell me, and I know I have said this myself at times, that I wish there was an off button for caring so much. Could somebody please just tell me where the off button is for my brain and caring so much? Have any of you ever felt this? I'm willing to bet you have. Make sure you type yes in the chat if this is you. Lots of lots of yeses coming through now. Hi April, great to see you here. Yeah. So if this is you, then I want to tell you a quick story that you may be able to relate to. It's about one of my clients who I'm going to call Marianne for the purposes of this. Now, Marianne had helped build a multi-million dollar business. She was someone who, for years, for decades, was the one leading, organizing, staying late, and if she had to, doing the work on everybody else's behalf. And now she was in her third year of an executive role in communications for a manufacturing company. And she was totally and utterly burned out. And for Marianne, it wasn't just the long hours and working hard. It was more so that her sense of self worth was deeply intertwined with her performance, with her reputation at work, and specifically what other people thought of her. So for Marianne, every day was like a game of whack a mole. She just moved through the office as if it was her duty, it was her obligation to be the one to solve every problem, even if it was below her pay grade or she had to pitch in last minute and cancel a session with her kids, going to her kids' soccer games, for example. And most nights she would tell me that she would fall into bed exhausted, literally collapse into bed with her husband, who was often in bed hours before she was, after another late night work session at the dining room table. And even though she was exhausted, she felt constantly guilty about falling behind as a mother, a wife, an executive. She kept going anyway. She kept thinking, well, I'll get to a point when, and when X happens, I'll feel better. Next quarter, this will change, right? How many times do we keep looking to the future and we keep saying, well, when this happens, everything will be better. So, Marianne's story, I wanted to share it with you because it exemplifies what overfunctioning can look like in action. And this is a pattern I see in my work over and over and over again as I coach sensitive strivers. Okay, let's see here. Yeah, Christine was saying I had to leave that job in order to find an off button. Absolutely. Yes, many of us come to that decision. And what I find many times is that what we don't address repeats itself, right? So many times we can escape the job, but unfortunately, our patterns come with us, right? So many times we have to change ourselves from the inside out. Okay. All right. So what is overfunctioning? Overfunctioning, as you may be gathering from how the word sounds, means you are taking on too much responsibility. You are trying to control things that you can't. So when you overfunction, you are trying to fix, to rescue situations and people because you fear that if you don't do it, no one else will. Now, overfunctioning is a bit tricky because it can masquerade as being very helpful, right? And I think a lot of you here, and certainly I know for myself, would say that you value being of service and helping others and giving and making an impact. But there's a shadow side to that tendency if it's left unchecked. So for overfunctioners, it can look like a positive because these people are quick to act. They are usually the first one to raise their hand to volunteer. You know, in a meeting where nobody else is speaking up and claiming an assignment, they're the first one that says, okay, I'll do it, even though they already have an overwhelming, overflowing plate. Because in some ways, they enjoy attacking a to do list, they enjoy seizing control and knocking through things and seeing progress. They're usually the coworker or colleague who is always willing to lend a hand to pitch in when the team is short staffed. And I'm seeing this now, especially as layoffs are happening across all sorts of industries, that everyone who is left to pick up the pieces, right? And they want to help and pitch in on when their team is facing a crisis. But as I said, overfunctioning has a dark side. So I'm going to share 8 signs of overfunctioning. as I'm going through these, I want you to keep a mental note, or if you have that piece of paper in front of you, I want you to keep a tally for yourself of how many of these you relate to. Number one, you absorb the emotions of your boss, your team, your family, and you're overly focused on their problems. Number two, you worry about other people's perceptions of you, and specifically, do they like you? Number three, you change your opinions or your actions in an attempt to make others happy or to keep the peace. Four, you are overly accommodating. You readily reschedule meetings, you give up your personal time. Five, you beat yourself up for never doing enough or never being productive enough. Six, very closely related to that, you struggle to relax, to sit still, or enjoy your downtime. Seven, perfectionism. Perfectionism and overfunctioning tend to go hand in hand. And this can look like striving to get that A plus gold star in everything you do and feeling like a failure if you fall short of that. And eight is avoiding asking for help because you think it will make you appear weak or incompetent. So, for those of you that were following along, how many of those 8 signs do you relate to? Go ahead and type it in the chat. Okay, let me check in here with the chat. Valencia was saying, so is it the job or is it us? And how do you know the difference? Valencia, we're going to get into some tips and I hope that will cover that. So stick around for just a few more minutes. Okay. And AJ was saying, yes, getting known as the all-arounder, being the person everyone can depend on and always taken for granted. I love that. Well, I don't love that. It's unfortunate, but those two things tend to go hand in hand, being the go-to person who can be depended on, but also being taken advantage of. And we're going to touch on that in just a second. So I see many of you are relating to most of these 6, 7, or 8. Okay. And most of all, this gets to what AJ was saying just a minute ago. Most of all, overfunctioning can manifest as doing tasks for someone that they can do for themselves. So at work, this can look like staying involved in basic admin tasks or daily execution, even though you've moved on. Possibly, even though you're in a leadership role now, you're still holding on to some of the work from your past role. Constantly reminding people to do things, reminding your team, reminding your coworkers about due dates instead of letting them self-manage. Researching information when someone can look it up themselves, providing people with the answers rather than having them come up with a plan, having goals for other people that they don't desire for themselves. Okay? All right. So it might be clear as I'm going along why sometimes I like to refer to overfunctioning as heroing. You are constantly in a fear-based reactive mode, trying to save, like a hero, save everyone around you in an attempt to maintain some kind of control or to gain validation or a sense of security that I matter, I'm doing enough, I'm good. Here's the thing though, when you assume too much responsibility, when you overfunction, it can create a dynamic where other people can underfunction. You become the consummate student in a group project. I think we have all been here, who you are the one that pulls all the weight for everybody else, does all the work, and then you feel resentful for doing so. And this gets to what AJ was saying, that you become the go-to person who does everything but is not appreciated for that. So when you assume responsibility for fixing situations, for rescuing other people, then others don't have to step up. They don't have to do their part, which can be frustrating at the very best and can be very damaging at worst. Now, as a result of constantly self-sacrificing, working at a completely unsustainable pace, I'm sure many of you can also attest to the fact that overfunctioners also tend to be prone to burnout. These things go hand in hand. Okay. And Gay Marie was saying, the more we step up, the more others kick back. Unfortunately, very true. Okay. So what do you do? How do you stop overfunctioning? Well, I want to give you some tips today. And a couple of these are mindset oriented because You may feel like you're being generous, you're being helpful by being agreeable, but in actuality, that is coming at the great expense of your own mental health and the quality of your relationships, and frankly, the quality of performance on your team or in your organization. So when you are overextending yourself, when you are carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders, it isn't good for you, nor does it allow the people you work with or the people in your lives to step up, to grow, to lead in the way that they need to, frankly. So overfunctioning, it's a habit that takes years to get set in place. It takes time, it takes support to unravel. This process does not happen overnight. This is something we work on for the course of 3 months inside Resilient. But that doesn't mean you have to continue being a victim to it. So, as I said, today I want to give you a few small steps you can take to stop overfunctioning starting today. Number one is to observe your patterns. Someone please write that in the chat for me. Observe your patterns. You all here are very self aware folks, and I'm sure that you know self awareness is always the first step to creating change. If you can't identify a problem, you can't change it. So, to that end, now that you are armed with this information about what overfunctioning is, how it manifests, I want to give you all an assignment to start paying attention. Where in your life and in your work do you find yourself taking on more than your fair share of the workload or responsibility? Whether that's in a project, a relationship. In particular, I want to give you a shortcut to this. In particular, I want you to look for areas where you feel an intense or an outsized sense of resentment. Resentment. Okay. Resentment is a strong emotional signal that you feel overworked, underappreciated, that you are overextending yourself. And it's your body trying to signal to you that you are over functioning. And this is important. This is why we talk a lot in Resilient about using your emotions as tools. Your emotions are not bad. They can point you towards situations that need tending to. And this is a great example of that. So take stock of where you're experiencing resentment. Perhaps you said you would pitch in on a project a couple months ago. Now it's dragged on much longer than you thought. And every time you see that invite hit your inbox, you feel resentful. What does that mean about what you need to change? Conversation you need to have, a boundary you need to set. So that identifying where that emotion of resentment is coming up can help you identify situations that need changing. All right. So that was number one, observe your patterns. Number two, update unhelpful mental scripts. Okay, you have all been so great about helping me out in the chat here. Let's do that again. Number two, update unhelpful mental scripts. Overfunctioning is driven by the deeply held belief we have about ourselves and about the way the world and work should work and our responsibilities within that. So, for example, you may believe, like the client Marianne I was talking about earlier, you may believe that as a manager or leader, it is your responsibility, it is your duty to provide air cover for your team. And I'm not making this up. This is something I hear over and over again from sensitive strivers who are leaders who tell me, but I have to take on all of the rain, all of the rain that comes down because my responsibility as a leader is to provide air cover for my team so they can do their best work. So, in other words, that you need to take on small, monotonous tasks that are way below where you should be making an impact in an effort to protect other people's time. So, in Marianne's case, one reframe she had to embrace was to consider that by continuing to follow this belief, she was doing a disservice not only to herself, but to her team and the company. So by spending time on that lower value work, she wasn't fulfilling her organization's objectives. And she was letting the executive team and the board down. And so she began to value her time, value her efforts more, to free up more bandwidth to focus on the strategic, bigger picture work that only she could do and that would make a larger impact. So I want you to consider for yourself, and if you feel comfortable, you can go ahead and type in the chat. I want you to consider what stories, scripts, or rules have you been holding yourself to? It should be like this. It has to be like that. I must do this. What are those stories, scripts, or rules you've been holding yourself to? Which are no longer helpful or true? They might have served you at an earlier point in your career, but they don't help you anymore. What needs updating or refreshing in in order to help you to allow you to be at your best professionally and personally? So as I said, if you feel comfortable, go ahead and share that in the chat. Okay, so we've talked about observing your patterns. We've talked about updating unhelpful mental scripts. Now let's talk about our third tip, which is teach people how to treat you. If you have joined any of my lives in the past, you have probably heard me say this. I will continue beating this drum until the end of time. Teach people how to treat you. You have probably unknowingly conditioned your boss, coworkers, your friends, even your family to treat you like a pushover. And I mean that very kindly. I've been here myself. I still fall into this trap from time to time. But you have likely conditioned them to treat you in certain ways. They have probably come to regard you as the one who is always there, who always says yes, who is always willing to change plans or be accommodating to their preferences and desires. The good news about this is that relationship dynamics can be changed, but that requires that you begin to respect your own time and energy. You can't expect others to honor your boundaries unless you uphold them first. So that may look like creating time blocks on your calendar for focused work and sticking to them, not allowing other people to book over them. It may look like ending work by a certain time, communicating to other people that you won't be checking emails or you can't take meetings after that. It might look like setting clear expectations at the beginning of a project about how much or where you can and cannot contribute. Okay, so that's teaching people how to treat you. Okay, and number 4 is recruit help from others. Recruit help from others. So get better at delegation. Take it slow at first. Look for opportunities for other people to take on small pieces of work that you are currently doing. Even if it's getting a project to 80% and you finish the last 20%. And this is a big one. Coach your colleagues and your team members. Instead of automatically fixing issues for them, engage them in thoughtful questioning instead. Ask about what they've already tried. What are solutions you've considered? How might you approach this problem? What's worked in the past? Don't just automatically tell them what to do or say, you know what, I'll take care of it. Don't worry about it. Okay. You will likely be very surprised by how enthusiastically the people around you step up once you start stepping back. I know it can be scary, but delegating and taking a coaching approach empowers people to build their own confidence, to develop agency. It creates more efficiency as well, so everybody wins. It's important, though, here, it doesn't go without saying, that you have to be comfortable letting others do things imperfectly. They are going to make mistakes. They are going to approach assignments and tasks differently than you would. And last, you have to leave unstructured time in your schedule. You have to prove to yourself that it is safe to exist and to be without being productive every second of the living day. Okay, let's go over those 4 tips again. And thank you to all who are typing these in the chat. It's a big help for everyone. Number 1, observe your patterns. Number 2, update unhelpful mental scripts. Number 3, teach people how to treat you. And number 4, recruit help from others. Okay, go ahead and type in the chat what resonated with you the most today. Tell me your top takeaway in the chat. Okay, perfect. And Gay Marie was saying, how and why did this become negative? Shouldn't dependability be rewarded? Absolutely, it should be rewarded. What I'm talking about here are extreme cases where your dependability is coming at the expense of your own well being and the growth and development of other people around you. And so that's what we're talking about here. Trust me, I am all for dependability, and I think that is one of the great strengths that sensitive strivers have to offer is their degree of responsibility. But our attributes as sensitive people, responsibility being one of them, can have an upside in terms of loyalty, dependability, but it can have the shadow side that looks like overfunctioning, having no boundaries, what have you. Okay, so let me see. Let's see. Okay, observing. A lot of folks are resonating with observing their patterns. AJ was saying, I have to be comfortable not being productive all times of the day. Tyler said, it's uncomfortable to let people, or it's hard rather, to let people do things imperfectly. Absolutely, it is. And Jillian was saying, don't come to the rescue of others. So, if any of this resonated with you today, then I want to encourage you to come and check out Resilient. Through weekly coaching, we have a comprehensive curriculum and a supportive community of other sensitive strivers. This is exactly the type of things we work through hand in hand over the course of 3 months together. So, this is the perfect program for you if you want to take life changing steps in your career that help boost your confidence, your influence, and your impact while creating the inner peace that you crave. So, as I said earlier, early enrollment opens in just 1 week. This is your chance to save $500 on enrollment and to secure one of the limited spots. So, you're going to want to make sure you get on the wait list for that. Head to melodywilding.com/resilient to get on the wait list now. You'll be the first to hear next week when spots open. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining today. It was great to have you, and I'll see you soon.